All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we're breaking down one of the most stunning military campaigns in history, the early Muslim conquest of Syria. We're going to explore just how a smaller, emerging power managed to completely outmaneuver the mighty Byzantine Empire through pure strategic and tactical genius. So let's start with this number, 240,000. That was the estimated size of the Byzantine army that was mobilized to just crush the Muslim presence in Syria. I mean, think about that. It was an overwhelming force, an absolute anvil, designed to bring the hammer down with finality. You see, the core problem wasn't just the insane numbers, it was division. The Muslim forces were split into 4 separate, smaller armies, each with its own commander, and they were spread thin all over the region. This made them incredibly vulnerable. They risked getting picked off one by this single, massive Byzantine army. Okay, so with his armies right on the brink of disaster, the response that turned the tide didn't come from a general on the battlefield. No, it came from hundreds of miles away. From the strategic center, the Caliph Abu Bakr started to orchestrate the entire campaign. And this right here, this was the order that changed absolutely everything. It's so simple, so direct, but strategically, it's profound. He didn't just suggest they coordinate. He gave a direct command: consolidate. Those 4 vulnerable armies had to become one single, cohesive fighting force. And the way they executed this was just brilliant. This wasn't a retreat in panic. It was a calculated, strategic withdrawal. Units pulled back from Homs, from Jordan, from Damascus. They were giving up territory on purpose to achieve something much bigger. This is a textbook military principle in action, the massing of forces. And where they met up? That was no accident. The choice of Yarmook shows that the Caliph had this incredible grasp of the terrain. He wasn't just picking a random spot on a map. He was choosing the battlefield. He was choosing a place where geography itself could be turned into a weapon. But look, getting all the troops in one place was only half the solution, right? A unified army is pretty useless without a unified command. So now, the next big challenge was finding the right leader. A single, decisive commander who had the skills to win what looked like an impossible fight. This quote, wow, it is a masterclass in leadership and pure pragmatism. The Caliph is writing this to the senior commander, Abu Ubaidah, and he lays it out plain and simple. He is saying this isn't about who has higher rank or even who is a more righteous person. This is about putting the right person with the right skills in charge for this exact mission. It's all about prioritizing raw military talent. And what happened next just demonstrates the incredible discipline of this army's leadership. A single letter arrives, and command is transferred. Just like that. Flawlessly. Abu Ubaidah, a deeply respected senior commander, immediately accepts the order. There was no ego, no fighting about it, just an absolute laser focus on the mission. Khālid's appointment was a very deliberate choice. At this critical moment, the army didn't just need a manager, it needed a weapon. It needed a commander with unparalleled tactical genius, someone known for making those bold, decisive moves that win battles. Okay, so let's shift the battlefield and see how all these big strategic decisions actually translated into victory. The stage is set, the commander's in place, now the real fighting begins. So the first major test comes at the Battle of Ajnadayn. And even after pulling some forces together, the numbers were still daunting. You've got the Muslims, maybe 30,000 strong, facing a Byzantine force of at least 70,000. They were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. The outcome was just staggering. A decisive Muslim victory. And this wasn't a long, drawn-out slugfest. It was a surgical strike. The sources tell us that a special force was sent to penetrate deep into the enemy ranks with one single objective: take out the commander. And once he was killed, the entire Byzantine resistance just crumbled. It was a perfect example of skill beating scale. Now, before we get to the final showdown, we need to really understand this concept: strategic terrain. It isn't just about grabbing the high ground, it's any feature of the landscape you can use as a weapon. Something that can fundamentally shape the battle by basically trapping your enemy and limiting their options. And this is exactly what went down at Yarmouk. The Muslims engaged that massive Byzantine army at a very specific spot called al-Waqusa. It was a tactical trap. The terrain was messy, hard to maneuver in, and most importantly, it was described as being difficult to flee from. By choosing this battlefield, the Muslims pretty much neutralized the Byzantines' numbers advantage and created enormous psychological pressure. So, we've seen brilliant strategy and some absolutely devastating tactics. But what was the secret ingredient? What was the invisible foundation that made all of this possible? Well, it was a factor that you can't really see on a map: superior discipline. This message from Caliph Abu Bakr to his armies really gets to the core of their strength. He taught them that victory and defeat weren't just random, they were tied directly to their own discipline and obedience. In his view, military cohesion was a direct reflection of their spiritual commitment. This theological belief was basically the army's operating system. That command to obey and not dispute, that was the core principle. It's what allowed for that seamless transfer of leadership and created that unwavering unity, even when facing these impossible odds. Ultimately, this deep shared conviction worked as a powerful force multiplier. Now, that's a military term for anything that dramatically increases the effectiveness of a fighting force. It's like turning up the volume on their power. It took an army that was already outnumbered and made every single soldier, every single unit, exponentially more effective. And that leaves us with a final question to think about. When we look back at the great battles of history, what's the ultimate deciding factor? Is it the force you can count on a piece of paper, or is it that invisible conviction that binds an army together and makes it something more?